Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unity Church. Today, we'd like to begin our service by, thanks, Larry. Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Kayla's right back there. You can go talk to her. Oh, we have the same jacket. All right. Affirmation for this new month, which is to coincide with Unity's World Day of Prayer. So we'll be saying this affirmation together all month long. So let's affirm this together. As I discover the power within, I unleash my divine potential. I am grateful. We also, since it's the first Sunday of the month, this is where we get to do everything. So we're going to honor our volunteer. So every month we have the board of directors chooses a volunteer for the month. And so we'd like that person to come up because it's Virginia. Don't be looking in your bulletin now. I was hoping she didn't, and she didn't have time to read the bulletin. Yay! Here we go. Oh, she had eye surgery this week. We've been praying for her. Yes. So Virginia has been with this church since the beginning. Just about, right? Yeah. So this church is 30 years old. Wow. So Virginia has been involved in this ministry for a very long time. So we're honoring her for all the service that she's done in our community of Unity for all these years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me just say,
Yes.
30 years. I started when I was a baby. I'm 30 years old.
That is Virginia. She'll never, ever tell you her age. Ever. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today's daily word is faith. I place my faith in God and expect the best. Having faith is having joyous expectation. Placing my faith in God, I expect and accept positive outcomes. When I pray to successfully accomplish my goals, I receive clear direction. If I am praying for healing, I expect to be healed. When I pray for a loved one, I place my faith in the presence and activity of God at work within them to bring forth their highest good. I release negative thoughts, worries, or fears, for they indicate my attention has drifted away from God. I direct my expectations with positive outcomes in mind. Growing in spiritual understanding requires ongoing practice. It is a lifetime journey. So I step forward in faith with my mind and heart on God, secure in the knowledge that divine love is at work in me. Keep alert. Stand firm in your faith. Be courageous, be strong. 1 Corinthians 16:13. Again, today's daily word is faith, and our affirmation is, I place my faith in God and expect the best. Together, I place my faith in God and expect the best. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And now is the time where I invite you to visualize our sanctuary as a beautiful heart. So let's see this heart moving in and around and through each of us, moving through our sanctuary back into Sunday school, our children, and Kayla, our wonderful teacher. And so in these moments, allow this heart that is so filled with your love, your caring, your compassion for life, for yourselves, for each other, and your families. We breathe into this heart space. And right here and right now, we just allow our heart to be full. And if you know of anyone in need of prayer, see them in our heart. And if you know of any circumstance in your life or in our world in need of prayer, hold them in this sacred place. Fill it with love and peace and harmony as we sing the prayer for protection. And now I invite you to get comfortable where you are. Close your eyes if that feels right to you. And we begin our time of centering and prayer by just breathing. Let's take in a deep breath, that very breath of life that is God. And we hold it for a moment. And as we exhale, we begin to relax. Breathing in again deeply. And as we exhale this time, we just quiet our mind. We calm our emotions. And we allow ourselves to be here right now. And breathing in once more. And as we exhale this time, we rest in the consciousness of our heart. Relaxing our breath. We know truly that this is our time of connecting and reconnecting consciously with the God of our being. Knowing that that presence and power is always with us. Always there waiting, loving, nurturing, caring, bringing forth the light in times of darkness. This is our moment, our holy moment of embracing that whole presence, the presence of life, of love in the universe that resides in us, allowing us to be free, allowing us to be the best possible me we can be. That presence and that power strengthens us. It heals us. That power brings to us all good, prosperity in every way. We are grateful for all the good in our lives. We are faithful. We are loving. We are kind and caring. We are magnificent beings on this planet Earth, here to do the work that ought to be done by us in each moment of each day. We are willing. We're able to do our part. And so in these moments, as we go into a time of quiet prayer, allow that still small voice within to speak to you loudly, clearly, nurturing you in every way. Right here and right now in the silence. And now we take another deep breath. And exhaling, we feel ourselves connected to that innermost presence and power. Knowing right here and right now that all things work together for good. For the love that we have for ourselves, our families and each other, and our world. Love is the answer. And so in these moments we call forth that spirit of gratitude and acceptance, creating that loving heart within each one of us. As we say, thank you, Father, Mother God, for blessing us, for reminding us of our magnificence right here and right now. And so it is. Amen. Thank you, Larry. I'm so grateful to have Larry here, Larry Cyrus, playing for us today. And without further ado, I'm going to ask Dr. Dragos to come up and tell us whatever he's going to tell us for today. Yeah. Yes, here we go. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi everyone. Hello. Hi. I have to say this is probably one of the best services I have seen in my entire life, so thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for the warm welcome in Hawaii. I've been traveling now on 6 continents doing this work, and it's been it is such a great welcome from you to be here, so thank you for that. I don't know if you know anything about me. I come from, obviously I don't speak American English. I have a Romanian accent. I was born in Romania. I want to tell you, I come from a scientific background. I'm an aerospace engineer doing software for satellites. But a couple of years ago, I left my career to do this work, to empower people to live their truth, to live their dreams. And because of the background I came from, growing up during the last years of communism with a huge poverty consciousness, my work began to be about how you transform your dreams into reality, even if you start with nothing, because that was my background. So I'm going to give you a few stories today that will probably inspire you and make you understand why actually living your truth is the only way you can live. In 1633, there was an old man by the name of Galileo in Italy, and he was summoned by the Roman Inquisition. He received a letter. He was summoned to Rome because he had made the false discovery and the false claim against the church that the earth is not the center of the universe, but actually the sun is. And he was called to be hauled into court. And when he arrived in Rome, he was given 2 choices. The Pope said, you have the option of taking back your claim that the earth goes around the sun, and actually the Bible is correct saying that the earth is the center of the universe. Or you have the option, because we are the Inquisition and because we are kind to you, because you're in your 70s now, you either take back your claim or we burn you alive in the center of Rome, in front of everyone. So that's an easy option, right? So Galileo was now in his 70s and he loved life. He loved his students at the university. He loved his wife. So he said, you know what, I'm just going to sign the document, and he abjured his discovery. When he walked out of the courthouse, everyone in his entourage, his friends, his students, his closest professors from the university came to see what happened, even the public. And he told them the truth. This is what I've done. I signed because I love my life, I want to live, and I abjured my discovery. And everyone started to hate him for that. He said, you should have defended the truth because you knew that what you discovered was true, and you should have defended it, but now look what you've done, and you have proven again that the Inquisition has power over us, over the truth, even over reality itself. And Galileo said, look, I only had a choice between living and being burnt alive. But the fact that I had signed the document doesn't change anything. Today and tomorrow, 100 years from now, till the end of time, this earth will still go around the sun, with my grave, with your grave, with the Inquisition's grave, with the Pope's grave, because the truth is that reality and the truth doesn't need to be defended. It's that simple. So whenever something is true, it doesn't need to be defended. What we have to defend is our awareness of the truth. It's only our minds that have to be guarded against illusions and against lies, but not the truth, because the truth is there no matter what we do. Reality doesn't have to obey our ambition. Now, many years later, I was born in a small town in Romania, and I was born during the last years of communism. I don't know if you know too much about communism, but times were extremely difficult for most people. We grew up with poverty. People had to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning to be in line to get just a bottle of milk and some eggs. And actually the line, give us our daily bread, was actually a literal line, because we were entitled with food stamps to only half a loaf of bread each day and a few pieces of meat. I saw oranges only for Christmas, and I had my first Pepsi Cola when I was about 6 or 7 years old. But the problem was not the poverty itself, was the fact that any kind of freedom to express yourself, freedom to say anything, was cut off by the government. Because if you said the wrong things, if your kid in school said the wrong things, especially about freedom, they would put you in jail. There's so many poets who wrote lyrics about freedom and they were thrown in jail. Musicians and ministers, they were thrown in jail for speaking about God, for speaking about truth, for speaking anything about freedom. So obviously in this environment, most people tried, because they shut off their will to express themselves in order to survive. Most people find refuge in alcohol, including my relatives, my father, and many others. And it wasn't the kind of drinking that you know, like social drinking that you see in a pub in London where people have fun. No, it was the kind of drinking that people go in a damp cellar underneath their house, stay on a couple of car tires alone in the dark and drink by themselves, because it was the only way to cope with the environment. And to be honest, I hated my relatives for doing this. I didn't understand why this is happening. I loved them in the morning and I hated them in the evening, every single day for 30 years. Now, just 1 year ago, I understood actually what was happening. Now I'm 32, so it took me a while. I'm slow to understand things. So it took me 30 years. When I discovered an experiment made in Canada in the 70s, there was a professor who did an experiment. He wanted to see what exactly triggers addiction. And he took rats, and he put rats in solitary confinement. So each rat was put in an individual cage with no other rats around him. They couldn't touch each other, they couldn't see each other. They were alone in a cage for many days. And they were given two options. They had the option of drinking pure water from a bottle, or they had the option of drinking water with morphine. For you who don't know, morphine is pure heroin. The heroin that people find in the streets is filled with junk, with chalk dust, with brick dust, with detergent, all kind of stuff. However, the pure morphine, that's heroin much stronger than the one you find in the street. 100% of the cases, the rats in solitary confinement took the morphine water and killed themselves. But then the question was, is it possible that maybe it's not the drug that the rats prefer, but actually it's just an adaptation to the environment, to the cage they are in? So they took the experiment further, and what they've done is they took a whole room at the university and they created what is called Rat Park. And in Rat Park, the rats were free to run around. They had wheels to exercise. They had lots of cheese, and they had colored balls, and they have other rats to play with and to mate with. And very soon the whole park was filled with babies. And again, they had the same two options, the pure water and the morphine water. And at the end of each day, the professors were just measuring which of the two bottles they prefer. In a rat park, they had 0% overdose. They went from 100% when they were alone to 0% overdose when they were in a rat park. They didn't like the heroin water, they simply chose the pure water because the environment actually allowed them to bond with each other and to enjoy themselves. And do you know the common myth that if you take drugs for enough time, the chemicals in the drugs hook your body and you become addicted? Well, actually, they wanted to see if that's the case, and what they've done is they forced a rat for 60 days to take heroin alone in a cage, and after 60 days they took the rat from solitary confinement and they put them in a rat park. And what happened was, after a couple of weeks of withdrawal, the rats simply adapted to the environment and started to prefer the pure water. So addiction is basically just an adaptation to the environment. The conclusion of the study was that if you cannot cope with the environment, if you cannot cope with your situation, if you cannot bond, and if you cannot find any meaning in the situation, in the environment, the pain is too big, and the addiction, alcohol, or drug abuse is nothing more than a way to cut off the pain. So addiction is not the cause of something, it's just the effect of not having any meaning in your life. Well, obviously, they couldn't do the experiment on people, but in the same time, you had the Vietnam War on the other side of the world. And according to research, 20% of the soldiers in Vietnam were addicted to heroin. So by numbers, you had more addicts serving the military than you had on the streets of the entire US. And the media was outraged, and the general public was freaking out because everybody assumed you will have hundreds of thousands of junkies coming in the streets in the US. Well, it didn't happen. When they came home, 95% of those who were on heroin, regardless if they took any programs for rehabilitation or not, 95% of them simply gave up the drug because they changed the environment. So as I'm talking about going around the world, speaking about how you make your dreams a reality and living your truth, one of the most powerful things to remember is the social environment is that drives our thinking. People only need to feel caged in order to feel the pain of not having meaning in their lives. Can you give me some examples of how we can feel caged in our society today and have the same way of coping with the pain?
Employment or jobs.
Jobs? Where else?
Look, two parties. Two political parties.
Can you feel caged? Can you feel caged in a job that you hate? Can you feel caged in a marriage that you don't want to be in, or a relationship? How about if you're a kid in a university and you want to create and the environment doesn't empower you to create? So the problem of addiction, the problem with suicide, the problem of domestic violence, absolutely all problems, if you look at them closely, come down to people not being able to live the truth of who they really are. I'm going to explain later what living your truth means. But in simple terms, if your love, because it comes down to living your love in the end. If your heart pulls you in one direction, but the environment and your mind and your behaviors go the other way, basically this inner gap between what your heart makes you to do and your thinking and your behaviors, this inner gap becomes anxiety, becomes depression, becomes anger. If the tension is turned inwards, it becomes depression. If it's turned outwards, it becomes anger. And the only way to cope with the tension is not to mute or to steal the pain with alcohol, because it seems to be working simply because alcohol cuts away your awareness centers in the brain. And when you are doing that, it seems to be working. But the moment you wake up, you go back to where you began. So truth doesn't need to be defended, but also truth cannot be ignored, cannot be denied, and cannot be rationalized away. And simply truth means living the will of your heart. It's not your wish, it's not I would like to, it's not our desire, it's actually living the calling, the deepest calling of your heart. And I want to show you an experiment to see how powerful the social environment is and why each of us, from all of us here all the way to Jesus, had to rise and have to rise against the environment if the environment doesn't empower us. In the 1950s, there was an experiment done in New York by a psychologist. And what he did, he had a subject in a room, and he gave the subject 2 cards. A card with 3 lines on them, and the other card with 1 line with the question, which is the line on the first card that's the same size as on the second card. And obviously, every 5-year-old can answer the question, right? All subjects answered the question correctly. However, then the researchers added a twist to the experiment, and they had 7 people before the subject give the wrong answer. So 7 people before the subject said, the answer is A, the answer is A, the answer is A. And what they've seen is when the subject came to answer the question, in 70% of the cases, they gave the wrong answer. They simply said the same thing. Unfortunately, the experiment was done in the 50s, and the researchers didn't have the technology to actually study and to answer the most interesting question. Do subjects give the wrong answer because they just want to fit in, and they want to avoid conflicts, and they want to avoid the social pressure? Or the environment actually changes the way they see reality? They couldn't answer in the 1950s. However, there was an experiment done in 2005 using MRI technologies. They did the same experiment, and when the subjects answered the questions, they had an MRI headset to basically to take images of the brain when they are answering the question. The same experiment, the same wrong answers, and scientists discovered something really interesting. When subjects gave the wrong answer, they said if subjects would be conscious of what they are doing, they would have activity in the front of the brain that's responsible for conscious awareness, for conflict resolution, for conflict management, for conscious decision making. But they had absolutely no activity. The part of the brain in charge of decision making was shut down. However, they had a lot of activity in the part of the brain where in charge of spatial awareness. In simple terms, this means people believed they are making a decision. However, the brain was just informing them what they were seeing on the environment. Does it make sense? So they were thinking they are deciding, when in fact the brain was just informing them and feeding it as a decision of what they were seeing in the environment. So this is why the environment is so powerful, because if we don't look more on the inside, on our own hearts, and we take our cues from the environment, we simply adapt to what everyone is doing. But that's not the truth, and that's not love's will. That only comes from the inside. So whenever you have doubts about your dreams, about your life, about your love, simply shut your mind and your eyes, close your eyes from the world and look only inside. Because otherwise you might have the influence of the environment. Does it make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So if the social context drives your thinking and drives your behavior and it drives your dreams, what do we do about it? I had spent growing up in this environment, being a student with $100 a month for 5 years. I committed my life to actually figuring out, if I have a dream, there has to be a way to make it a reality. And starting from my $100 a month, I roamed around the world from the South Pole, from Antarctica to the North Pole. I've been from NASA. I had the chance to be mentored by some of the best minds at NASA, the guy who built Hubble Space Telescope and the guy who put robots on Mars. And this was in my daily program. In the nighttime, I was studying ancient spiritual traditions. I've been to monasteries in Russia, to temples in the Himalayas, and I only wanted to find out the answer to one question: how do we make our dreams a reality? And I had the chance to speak from Buddhist monks and Orthodox monks on a mountain in Greece, all the way to NASA legends, to rock stars, to Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. And in our today's society, we have this tendency to separate science and spirituality. Like we have to choose if we go on the path of science or spirituality, and we never can have both. And to me, it didn't make any sense because I didn't understand why a scientist cannot pray and why a person on a spiritual path can't think. It didn't make any... So for me, this was the conflict. Why not have both? Because if we put them together, we have more than each of them can actually contribute to our lives. And in my journeys, the answer, I found out it was extremely simple. And Sherlock Holmes was right when he said, Sherlock Holmes, the detective, when he said the best hideout is in plain sight. So regardless of what your dreams are, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you are born, what your background, the only way to actually find meaning is to live your truth. There's no way to find fulfillment by living a lie. There's no way of finding inner power and inner strength by having inner conflicts, by having the mind going this way and the heart going this way. So the only way to actually live and to cross this life is to do it with the body, the mind, and the heart as one. Because I was surprised to see that one of the guys from NASA who was in charge of developing thousands and thousands of leaders, he said to me, if you want to make your dreams a reality, and if you live your truth, you will have access and you will open up your two most powerful dimensions that you can build upon: enthusiasm and competence. And I thought, this is something you just say in books. It's just, nice philosophy, but how do I apply it? And he said, think about it deeply. How many of you have been on a plane? Most of you. How many of you came to Hawaii on one of these? Well, if you think about it, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, when people walked outside their houses and they had enthusiasm for flying, they were looking at the sky, at the birds, and say, it wouldn't be so cool to fly one day. But they had no mind, they had no competence, so they just did their best, and they put a couple of wings on their back, they put wings on a bike and jumped off a building or flew off a cliff and killed themselves. They had the enthusiasm, they had the passion, they had the fire, they had no brains. However, nowadays, we have both the heart because we want to fly, we want to travel to the moon and through the universe and to go to Europe and so on. And we have the competence of how to build a plane and travel safely. Not have one of these to travel across the ocean. So it's both the enthusiasm, the power of your heart, and the competence and the mind. If there's no enthusiasm, nobody flies off a building to see if it works. And if there's no mind, they do it and they kill themselves. So it's both of them. One of the founders of the X Prize in Silicon Valley, he said that in the future, when probably most of our jobs will be gone, the key will be to develop our mind, to develop skills in the service of the heart, of what we most value. Does it make sense? Ernest Holmes said, love shows the way, the mind makes the way possible. And then if you go to a mountain in Greece, one of the holiest monks there said that the purpose of our life is to put the power of creation, which is our mind, because the mind is the only one that can create, in the service of love. The mind has to become an instrument in the service of our will, of our truth, which is love. So, what does it mean to actually live your truth? 2,000 years ago, Jesus was teaching his disciples what he called the art and science of bringing miracles into reality. Because the apostles and his followers were asking, how do you do all these miracles? How do you create what we see around you? And he said, you are like a horse, a carriage, and the driver. The only way this ensemble can go somewhere together is for the three of them, the horse, the carriage, and the driver, to go in the same direction. The driver is your mind. It can have the vision, it knows where it wants to go, but he doesn't have the power to pull the carriage behind him. They do it in Japan, but anywhere in the world they don't do it. So, the driver is your mind. The horse is your love. If you build on any other emotion except love, you will not have the power to go the distance. It's just going to be a short spike of energy and then it's gone. And then the carriage is your body. Without mind, without the heart, is just dead. It's not going anywhere. So the moment you align the three of them together, the moment you align the horse, the carriage, and the driver, that's when you speak to the mountain, move away, and the mountain will move away. 2,000 years later, in the heart of Silicon Valley, there was an experiment done, and scientists were curious to see if our mind and our emotions can actually change matter. So what they've done is they took a sample of DNA, basically saliva, in a tube, in a sealed tube, and they had three groups of subjects trying to figure out if they can actually influence matter. The first group was just trained to feel emotions, to feel love, to feel compassion, to feel gratitude, to feel appreciation, but they didn't focus their minds. They were just feeling their love. And then they measured the DNA, nothing happened. The second group was only to focus their mind to expand the DNA strand just for 2 minutes. So all of them focused for 2 minutes to see if the DNA changes. Again, nothing happened. The third group, actually, they were in charge of lifting their emotions to feel love, to feel compassion, to feel gratitude, and after they were in the peak state, to focus their minds to expand or contract the DNA strand. In this case, they could measure the DNA has expanded to up to 25%. Nobody could touch anything. They were just simply through the power of the mind and the emotions. If 2 minutes of focusing on love can actually change the DNA, can you imagine what we can do if you focus on what you love for years? So if 2 minutes is enough to change the structure of matter, what happens if you focus for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years on what you love? That's what moves the mountain. So when I understood this, I wanted to give a message to people around the world that they can make their dreams a reality no matter where they start. I grew up with $100 a month as a student, and I got the chance to make all my dreams happen, to travel to the North Pole, the South Pole, to work with NASA. And when I started making the Amazing You film, basically my entire budget was to fly once from Romania to the US and film some interviews and then go back. That was the whole budget. And I'm going to tell the story after at the following program. It was an extremely difficult journey. I lost everything in my life to be able to create from zero again something new. But after I finished the film, after going through all imaginable and unimaginable suffering, because I've lost my girlfriend, my friends, all my money in the process to make this film, I received a letter the first day I put the movie out from a guy in New York, and he said, I didn't know him, so he just saw the movie and he said, you know what, my wife died 15 years ago when I was 60 and now I'm 75, so I haven't lived for 15 years. But now after I've seen your movie, I'm back to life, so I just wanted to thank you. Okay. Then a few months forward, I've been to New Zealand, and after the woman in the audience, a woman in the audience saw the film, she said, you know what, I just want to thank you because my husband committed suicide a week ago. I found him dead in my house, and I'm alone with a 7-year-old kid. And I didn't know what to do until then. I was lost, but now because I've seen your movie, I have a new track in life, and I want to thank you. So I never could plan for this to happen in my marketing materials or anything. You don't expect, because in my mind I thought, I'm going to make a movie to inspire students to choose a nice career or so on. And I got this feedback. Then I got a letter from a professor in Syria saying that the movie is so powerful it can change the lives of students after the years of war. So this is the kind of feedback I got from people who simply watched the movie and my labor of love for 1 year. So I hope to see you at 11:30.
Yes.
Which is in half an hour. And I'll take another 1 hour and a half then to tell you the stories, to watch the film. So I hope to see you then.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.